I got 10 days until the primary school Halloween disco. Okay, Halloween Special 3, Squirtle. I can do Squirtle.
This year, it's my eldest's turn, and he's provided his own plans. I had a good dig around and found a bunch of great Squirtle costumes, ranging from the basic to complex, sexy to scary. But what am I gonna make? Well, let's forget hands and feet. I don't have time to make a jumpsuit. You can watch the Anti-Venom film to see that process. Instead, I'll buy fast fashion.
You two-faced phony!
The tail should be an easy sew. For the head, well, I have previous on that. And for the shell...
This is a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle shell that I made last Halloween. It's made out of floor tiles, barge cement. It's pretty good. Should be the same thing again, right?
I make some maquettes to test out the pattern for the shell, ending up with something like this. I measure across my kid's shoulders and his neck to hip distance. Using these for the full-scale pattern, I've added 5cm to both measurements and marked guides to help me get an even shape to the shell. 6 curved darts are added, and after a quick test, I'm happy to transfer this to the foam. I've decided to deepen the central dart to soften the curve on the back and cut out with a cheap craft knife, as this stuff blunts a blade quickly. To join ABS foam, you use contact cement. I haven't touched mine since the Blazers project, so after a quick trip to the DIY store, I join all the darts together, test fit, and trim the edge with pipe insulation. To make the front of the shell, I get a rough body block by drawing on my child, and get this pattern. The shoulder and sides are deliberately longer, so they can become the straps that join the two halves together. But my panels are only so big, so I might have to figure something else out later. Lastly, I carve out Squirtle's shell pattern and put these aside until I've figured out the bigger problem.
I've been working on another maquette. This time, I got a pattern for a sphere off the internet, did some maths, and it's worked out pretty well. There are some core features. There obviously needs to be a hole for the head to go in. We've got to get this mouth shape in with the little beaky bit, and then there's the 2 eye holes. I only have 1 sheet of foam left. This is going to be tight.
I take some measurements of my kid's head and do the maths to figure out a 25cm diameter sphere. This was daunting at first, but with the help of this video, and with the measurements figured out, it's just pattern drafting, and I like drafting. I transfer the pattern to the foam and there's just enough space on 1 sheet for 8 panels. Once cut out, I try heat forming the parts into shape, but there isn't enough power in this old hairdryer. You really need a heat gun for this job. But after shaping it over my knee, it is better. I prepare the edges I'll join with contact adhesive, and while I wait for it to be touch dry, shape the next panel. Join by pressing together for the initial hold, and pinch the outside edge closed. Then glue up the next edge, shape the next panel, and repeat until I have a sphere.
Okay, it is only 10:15 on a Monday. And I'm up at 5:30, but anyway, shush. I have a shell. This needs a serious amount of work to fix some of the problems, but it is a workable base for what I wish to accomplish. The front shell is pretty solid. I'm pretty happy with this. I actually think this is going to be great. I just have to figure out how we're attaching this. And then there's what I spent all night working on, which is just desperate to come apart, apparently. I've made this perfect, spheroid. I'm very pleased with myself, but I don't think it's big enough to fit my child's head. And I've used all the foam. I don't know what I'm going to do.
Nothing to do but buy more foam and make this 35cm sphere. I cut out a neck hole and shove it on my child. I sketch on the details and draft patterns for the mouth and eyes. I pin these in place and trace. These are carefully cut out and...
For costumes.
Squirrel!
There's a lot of work to do, but with renewed enthusiasm, I start working on the details. cutting a tongue to be added later, as well as eye glints. Then some plugs to fill the gaps where the sphere didn't quite close up. Next, I need the individual plates for the shell. I start with the centre and draw in the final shape. Make a cut on the fold pattern and cut the piece. For the edge plates, I figured out this little trick, folding and creasing the paper into the right shape. That could then be used as a pattern. I put a bevel on all the edges of these plates, and with the parts pinned in place, I have this. I can now settle into what should hopefully be the last night of huffing glue. If you're looking at this from a purely sewing background, there's a lot of transferable skills. We're taking flat things and making them fit a body. There's a lot of patterns and fittings and joining. The thing that really separates this from a sewing project is the curing time. Every stage needs 24 hours between them, so it's taken 4 nights to build all these bits, and I'll need curing time for the filler, primer and paint, but I'm getting ahead of myself. I think that's the end of the glue huffing part of this project. If you're going to work with contact cement, you should look after your lungs because that stuff messes you up. In fact, I think I hear theme music. Oh, try that again, a bit louder.
Can you tell me a story?
Oh, I'd love to tell you a story. Maybe since it's Halloween, we could do a spooky story.
Once upon a time, there was a princess who loved to make pottery. And her friends and family said she was pretty good.
Oh, it's pretty good.
But somehow, that wasn't enough. The princess was searching for external gratification and turned to the Queen's magic mirror and asked, "Magic mirror on the wall, am I the best potter of them all?" And the mirror said,
You have a CTR of 5.1%.
Soon the princess spent all her hobby times trying to please the mirror and discovered crumbling clay between her fingers got the best engagement. And so the princess spent all her time trying to figure out new and more exciting ways to squeeze clay. All the while the potter's wheel grew dusty. The king and queen grew worried about her obsessive content generation, and she never made a pot for the joy of potting ever again.
That was a really good story. What did you think of the story, Stego?
I think I want to eat you.
The other thing that differentiates this from a sewing project is the sanding. I'm cleaning up the edges on the foam, then adding polyfiller to fill any voids between the panels and smooth out the shape. After another round of sanding, everything is ready for paint. Priming is important. What you should do is use a mixture of Mod Podge and acrylic paint to add a smooth and flexible skin to your work. I don't have any of that. I do have a bucket of white emulsion. My kid wouldn't listen to my advice on priming, but you should. On the Pokeball with no primer, the paint is being absorbed into the foam like a sponge, whereas with the emulsion, the colour goes on smooth and flat. It's not perfect, but the emulsion is better than nothing. Finished with the painting. Squirtle's looking awesome, super happy, just have to paint this pink. Not a problem. The issue is the shell. All the white paint wants to come off of the foam trim, which means I need a large quantity of white. Now, I could go absolutely mental and hit it with White Scar, but if you know anything about Games Workshop, I'd go bankrupt. The other option is I've got a tiny amount of various acrylic whites, a very small amount of PVA glue. I could make up a batch of that and put it on that. But while I was looking upstairs, I found this, which is not white, but it's tonally different enough that I think it will be okay. So we'll paint that up with this, hope for the best. We'll paint the eye glints with
whatever I can scrape together from the acrylics. And then we can get onto the details, which is the mesh behind the eyes, the straps, and hopefully a tail. Home stretch, let's do it. Let's go, let's go, let's go, let's go.
I paint the tongue, and while it dries, I nip out to the charity shop and find this lovely blue top. I dig through the scraps, never mind, for this scrap netting. And finally, I can bring out the sewing machine. I'm working on the straps. Earlier, I had cut these openings into the foam, and I'm adding straps of webbing to each of them. Then sewing down strips of Velcro that will join the sticky back Velcro I put in the shell. For the tail, with the top inside out, I pin the two sides together, draw on the pattern, stitch, cut, stabilise, turn out and add the swirl detail. Stuff with the contents of an old pillow, close the top and join to the seam allowance of the bottom ribbing of the jumper so that I can remove the tail after the festivities. Lastly, I lay the netting over the head and cut to shape, then glue it into position, securing with duct tape. Finally, I glue in the eyes and this is the finished costume.
This has gone well. I'm pretty happy. This is rattles. I don't know what my youngest put in here, but it's entombed in here forever. Squirrel has already had quite a hard life. We've only been out for one of 3 parties and it's come back pretty trashed. So I didn't do the right thing. I was close, but I wasn't right. You really do need to prime it with Mod Podge or like bedliner or something like that. Something that's flexible. You can see on the chest piece that the base paint isn't flexible enough, which means that the top coat of paint is cracking. But that's what you really need. You really need something that's quite flexible. And that will make a nice base on which you can put your colour. And then the step that I skipped, you want to put on a matte varnish on the top. Something durable, tough, seals it off, protects the whole thing. But I was working with what I had to the best of my abilities. In the end, the only things I had to buy were the extra panels for the head, the suit that my kid wore, the top from the charity shop, and the extra paint. So actually I spent quite a lot, so maybe a kind of clear coat and some Mod Podge wouldn't have been that much of an expense. But it is what it is. The kid's over the moon. I'm the best dad in the world right now because we worked really hard on this. We worked on it together and we got a really good result. Some things I should warn you. I don't think duct tape and contact cement react well together. That seemed like it was going to be a great idea, but it didn't really work. What I would recommend is stick with your cement and get some of those like really thin sheets of EVA foam and use that to sandwich the fabric in place and hold it. Other faults, the back. I thought this was going to be the easiest bit, but it actually ended up being the bit that maybe left me a little bit sour about the whole thing. This very spongy foam was murder to work with. I never actually decided to fill these gaps. I never really got a good coat of paint on this. But it's a Halloween costume. This isn't cosplay. This isn't like trying to win awards at Comic-Con. This is just a Halloween costume and a bit of fun. I'm happy enough with what I've achieved. I'm definitely up for doing more of this. It was a lot of fun. And yeah, my kid, as I said, my kid is so happy. So I'm just going to chart that up as a major win in the dad column. Other business. Well, I used to be in a band, okay? And the band is reformed and we got a show at the end of the month. And I'm going to do merch. So that's the next video. And after that, it's the end of the year video. This year's just kind of flown in. Thank you very much for watching. Even an extra special thank you for all the people that would normally be tuning in for sewing content and got foam fabrication. You know, this is just a special little dalliance with other crafts. I'm a sewist. I am still up against the deadline on this one. So if I'm going to get this out for Halloween, I need to stop talking to you and get into the edit. All right, see you next time. Bye!